Now we're going to write a report with the data that we have. And to do that, we're going to create another output file. So we're getting pretty good at this now. So OF stream is the data type, and then we can give it a name. And here I'm just going to call it out report. And again, this is a variable name, so you can name it whatever you want. And then we need to connect it to a file. And so here we're going to connect it to computereport.txt. So I'm just going to copy that. But we need to go up 2 folders, /// so it can put it in the project folder instead of in the build folder. And there we have an output stream, right? Okay, and then we're going to write to it. And we're going to write this report that includes all of these things. Well, let's start by writing the header for this report. So we want this to be just kind of a laid out nice report. And we want to write the name. I'm going to leave some spacing here. So the town, leave some spacing, the minutes. Now we'll have to come back and clean this up. I'm just going to get us started here with just, some spacing, and average minutes. And then an endl, because we want this to be on its own line at the top. All right. So there's the heading, and we're writing it to this new output file stream. Now, what is this average? Average of minutes per mile to the file. So that's something we're going to have to figure out. We have all the other things in arrays, huh? So let's just do this one at a time. So we're going to be doing this for every element in the array, but let's just do it for one to get us started. And we'll just start working on getting one right, and then we can add the details for the others. So we're going to be writing several things, and I'm going to put these on individual lines. So I'm going to start the out report, but and I'm just going to put every item on an individual line. So we're going to print out the name, and that's going to be in the names array. And we're just doing the first one, so I'm going to put 0 there. And the next one that I'm going to do is in the towns array. And again, element 0. And then in the minutes array, commute minutes array, element 0. And then commute miles array, element 0. And then we have this thing average. So let's stop here and say, okay, we don't know what average is. So average is the minutes per mile to the file commute. So we're going to have to actually compute that. We don't have that in anything. So this is going to be, it's an average, so that won't be an integer. That will work better as a float. And it equals the commute minutes. So there's the commute minutes for this element. Commute minutes divided by the commute miles for this element. And this is something that we'll have to compute for each element as we move through the arrays. Now, this is an integer. Commute minutes is an integer. Commute miles is an integer. So if we have an integer divided by an integer, that is a integer division, and it'll just return an integer. And we don't want that. We want to go ahead and have the average that has decimal places after. So if you know it's 2.5 or 3.81. So I'm going to static cast one of these, right? I want to make it floating point division. So I need to make either the numerator or the denominator a floating point value. And that could be a float or a double. So static cast is what we used to typecast. And inside here we put what we want it to be cast to. And in this case, I want it to be cast to a float. And then in the parentheses, we put what we want to be cast to a float. And what we want to be cast to the float is the commute miles. All right. Now this will cast it to a float for this operation only. So it won't be for any other, it won't change what's actually in the array, right? So commute miles will still contain integers. This value will be an integer, but for this operation, so for the division, it will say, okay, take that integer, convert it to a float to do this division. And then when it does the division, it says, oh, I've got a float here, so I'm going to use floating point division, and then we'll have that average. So now we've computed it, we can print it out. And then we need an end-L to end it. All right, so let's print this and see what we've got going so far. So it comes up and it builds, and then it doesn't display anything in the output screen, right? Because we're not sending anything to the console output, but we're sending it to this commute report. So let's look at this commute report. There's our headers, and there's the output: name, town, commute minutes, commute miles, and the average. So we've got all the values that we want. This isn't a nice looking report, right? We want to add some spacing here. So let's see how we can add some spacing.